How do I start this? If you were ever, and I'm just spitballing here because it never happened to you, but if you were in some sort of like relationship, right? Or friendship, right? Who do you play as in that role? And I'm pretty sure there's going to be some of you that are going to be like, I do this and I do that, and there are going to be others that don't know. And that's the reason why I asked that question, because I have seen it happen to me, and I have seen it happen to people I know. I have seen the term, especially with people around my age, when it comes to just being around someone or being in a relationship, what exactly do you do, right? Like, what makes it so special? What to you is the concept of a relationship, right? And while I have an answer that I will say later, I genuinely want to know, because I have seen it in many ways. I have seen people that only want to be together because they like having the label. They like calling themselves that they have a partner, that they have someone. And I don't know if it's either to brag or either to feel good about themselves, right? And there are people, and there are people that play as more of a dominant and submissive kind of relationship, to where you have one person doing everything, calling all the shots, being in charge, and you have one person that just blindly follows the whole time, right? And then you have those toxic relationships, right? You have those relationships to where people are always angry at each other, and it's more of a love-hate kind of thing, right? And while I'm saying that, and while I'm not saying that all of these are bad, because everyone finds compromises and everyone finds a way around it, to me, in my opinion, it's not generally right. And the reason why I say that is because the way it is described would only make sense if you've actually been there, you know? The way I see it, and this is just my opinion, is that you're supposed to work together. And you could say it's different, or one-sided, or your partner or whatever, or yourself would say that you can't do that. But to me, that's how it works. Whatever you do together. If there's a problem, you both solve it together, right? You both like it or not. You stick with each other. You support each other, you help each other through literally everything. You do whatever it takes to help them, right? And while to a normal person, they might say that that's, like, for example, my friends, they're like, that's obsessive, or that's too much. When you compare it from a teenager, right, to an adult, it's so different. I remember I used to date this girl, right? I used to date this girl, and she was everything to me. So much so that I was willing to get rid of everything else. And that was my problem. And that's why I asked that question, because it can ruin you if you don't know what you're doing. I didn't know who I was in that bond. I didn't know who I was playing. I didn't know what I was doing. All I knew was that I wanted to be with her, and I wanted to help her. I wanted to support her. I wanted to do everything I could to make her not regret choosing me. And the process of that was that she never cared about me the way I cared about her. And the problem with that is that when you are like that, you are in a sinking ship. You're supposed to love each other equally. No more, no less. And I have a very good reason why. If you have someone that's gonna overshower you with love, like I did, and you don't meet up to those expectations, you could either feel very insecure about yourself, or you could feel like he or she, or whatever their pronouns are, is obsessive. And that's where that term comes from to me. If you're being obsessive, that means you're doing so much for nothing. At least in my opinion. And there could be someone that says it's a different answer, someone that says like a different reason, but that is what I see. That is what goes through my head. Is that you're doing way too much for someone that isn't going to repay it whatsoever. And the problem with that is that if you don't know that yourself, it's going to ruin you. And I know that because I have been through that with this girl. I gave up everything for her. So much so that I was willing to stay by her side no matter what people did and what people said. People told me that I shouldn't treat her this kind of way, or I shouldn't act this kind of way near her. And I cared about her, so I would say fuck you, you know? I would say I don't give a shit. I care about her and I'm willing to stay with her no matter what it takes. But that's the thing. I was. She wasn't. She gave a whole lot of different reasons of why she left. But the way I see it is she didn't want someone like me. I was too good for her. I did too much. I was too caring. I put so much for nothing. And I guess she was scared, or she felt like I would want something because she didn't see what I was really trying to do. She didn't see the real reason why I did it, and the reason why I did it was because I wanted to show her that I cared. I wanted to show her that I was dedicated, that we were a team, that we were together, that we were going to get through this. But she never saw it that way. And now look at me now. You don't see my face, but it tore me apart. I couldn't deal with it. And when I was in that state, you know what was going through my head? That one moment. That one moment to where, because I basically let her drag me around, and I finally realized it, and I finally pulled the string. Not only was I filled with regret, but the only thing that kept going through my head was all those reasons. The only thing that kept going through my head was all the bad stuff. And that is your problem. Because if that's all that goes through your head, right? If that's all that goes through your head when you break up with someone, or when you divorce someone, or even while you're still together, or even while you're still married, or whatever the case may be, if that's all that goes through your head, you are planting a seed of hate. Because you're too focused on the reason why you're angry, instead of the reason why you were angry in the first place. And I'm going to say what my dad tells me all the time, and I have seen it happen every time. And it's because people don't know how to communicate right. You got people that will keep their mouths shut until they can't deal with it anymore and just walk off. And you got people that will tell you every little thing. right? And this doesn't necessarily have to involve love and stuff. This is just people in general. And that's what leads to big conflicts and fights and problems. Because if they're going through something, or if something happens, or even if they just feel a certain type of way, if you're gonna keep it to yourself, or if you're not going to say something, it gets worse. And while an adult may be saying that, that's right, or that's true, and, whatever, taking it from a kid's perspective, like a 16-year-old, myself, right? Or just teenagers or children in general. Communication is the one thing that could either cause or destroy pretty much everything they seek out. Like, let's say, for example, if your child was depressed, right? And they don't want to talk to you. And then the next day, you figure out that they don't want to be here anymore. Right? They don't want to be in this world anymore. And you never knew why. Now you gotta go through all this stuff. Now you gotta do everything. So much more work. Because they failed to communicate to you. And while there could be multiple reasons why, like for me, for example, I never got to trust my parents. I just couldn't lean into them the way that others do. I couldn't trust them, so I had to keep everything away. I had to hide everything, encrypt what I could. And that creates a very toxic relationship, but more importantly, that trust is the very thing that's going to cause a lot of problems. And when you take it into the mind of someone that barely even knows who they are yet, it's at that time to where they need you the most, but because of the decisions that happened on both ends, not just the child but the parent as well, I have realized through my own experience and through people's experience in general that there's always that one thing, right? There's always that one mistake that you will make that will make them hate you for the rest of their life. And while some parents are going to be like, you know what, I don't care. As long as they do what they're supposed to, that's all I care about. But that's exactly the problem. Because if you put them in that minefield, if you put them in that state that you don't care, then what's to say that they won't tell you something if something serious happened? What's to go say that they will trust you and open up to you in a way that they need to? Or what's to say that they won't do something because they felt like if you were involved, you're going to be a problem? And I have seen that happen through my experience and through the aftermath of others. What I'm trying to get here, or what I'm trying to prove, is that teamwork doesn't necessarily have to be with a job, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be to achieve a goal. I use it for everything. And that is the one thing that I wish people did too. Because when you make people feel like they're equal to you, right? Like they're not less and they're not more. Because if they're higher than you, if they believe they're bigger or stronger than you, they're going to have a sort of reaction to that. And most of the time it's negative. If you have someone that's lower than you, while sometimes they may look up to you, others will get aggressive to you and try to be as better as you. And this can go with parenthood, or this can go with friends or loved ones or relationships or anything. There's got to be some parts, some situations to where you have to work together. And I'm not talking about like money and situations. I'm talking about in general. People don't bond the way that I thought people did. You know, like if you compare a family in a movie theater, or like in the movies or TV shows, and you compare it to now, to real life, it's completely different. It's almost disappointing. Like you have people yelling and screaming, you have people just doing things for no reason, right? And that doesn't necessarily, like for a child, you can't just blame that all on growing up, right? Like when I was in my stages, my parents classified it as just me being a teenager. They didn't care that I was dealing with something. They just cared that because I'm a kid, this is supposed to happen.